Hello again. We sometimes forget that absolutely everything we value or that makes our lives worthwhile has its origin in Europe. Whether we're thinking of the science which makes our day-to-day life pleasant and agreeable, things such as mains electricity, electric lights, mobile telephones and the internet, to the culture which we value, such as the very concept of the novel, all has its roots in Europe. Motor cars and aeroplanes, antibiotics, X-ray machines and anaesthetics, television sets and movies. They were all devised in Europe or by people in North America who were descended from Europeans. These things have been provided to other parts of the world now, such as Africa, Asia and South America, but nobody in those places would have come up with the ideas for themselves. Once we show them how to do it, they can certainly make televisions or even space rockets, but they could never have invented them for themselves. It is true that one or two of the most basic ideas in human affairs, things such as writing and mathematics, arose spontaneously in China and the Middle East before they did in Europe, but that was all 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. There's been nothing original since then. The idea of the aeroplane being invented in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, simply makes us laugh, as does the thought of the first telephones coming into existence in China. We know that such ideas are absurd. Without European intelligence and ingenuity, there would have been no invention of the telephone or the aeroplane. All this is very obvious, although we now live in a multicultural society, and it is therefore considered a little impolite to talk about it. Instead, we pretend that all the continents of Earth have produced marvellous things and that there is nothing special about Europe's contribution to world history. This is quite false. Without Europe, there would be no technological civilization. The modern civilization which Europe has built is now in danger. Ours is not the first civilization to arise in Europe, and previous ones, such as that of Rome, have fallen into barbarism. When the Roman culture fell, it ushered in a dark age when all the benefits of Roman civilization were lost, and Europe was reduced to a more primitive level of existence for some centuries. We seem to be on the cusp of something similar today. The Romans had become decadent and lacked the will to defend their culture, and when the barbarians came sweeping in, Roman civilization was looted and destroyed. Looked at from a geopolitical perspective, both Europe and America are now undergoing an invasion of people from less developed cultures. It is, to be sure, a slow invasion, not one carried out by galloping riders swinging swords. Nevertheless, there are distinct similarities. The Romans had lost the will to assert themselves. They had no confidence towards the end in either their ability to defend their civilization, nor even whether it was worth defending and fighting for. In the West now, we are agonizing about the value of our own civilization and wondering if it is really something of which we should be proud, or rather if we ought to be ashamed of it because of the legacy of slavery and colonialism. Young people in particular do not seem to have any confidence in the idea that their civilization has been uniquely successful and given the world everything which is worth having. Because of this, nobody seems to have the stomach to stand up for their culture and its achievements, let alone fight for it. It is almost as though at the back of their minds many people think that we deserve to be conquered in this way, and that the European civilization has been a bad thing for the world. Only 50 years ago, both Britain and America were prepared to stand proud and proclaim that their civilization and heritage was valuable and had brought the rest of the world out of darkness, as indeed it had. Now there is not even any backbone to resist the invaders. These people who are heading north into Europe and North America do not come because they wish to help build up the civilization which we have. They're not coming because they share our values and ideals and want to be part of the enterprise of Western culture. They are rather here to loot what they can take of value. This looting is not of the type carried out by the Visigoths when they attacked Rome in the early 5th century. The sacking of Britain and America is a far slower and more leisurely affair. It is nonetheless looting for that. The £7 million a day paid to house asylum seekers in hotels in Britain is part of this looting, as is latching on to the National Health Service in Britain. The sacking of Rome in 410 AD was a swift and brutal business, but the sacking of Britain is proceeding at a more gentle pace, although just as systematic and damaging in the long term. Slowly, inexorably, the West is falling to the halt from the East and South, and although it might take decades instead of weeks, the results will be just as certain as the fate which befell Rome, the extinction of our civilization and the onset of a new dark age.